Okie welcome to EU and UK edition of the Flux Dev meeting. Let's have a look at the agenda. Action items from last meeting. Okay. It's a shame Daniel's not here. He could tell us how the due diligence for incubation doc is going. I can only give my impression, which is that it is going okay and it is almost complete. And Li Zhang is having a look at it and was commenting, I saw. So that seems like progress. So that's cool. Do not see. Stefan, I think you were going to put a redirect for the Flagger Slack and website.
Yeah, didn't have time for that. I'm going to make a pull request today and start moving users from one Slack to another.
Awesome. Cool. Does someone mind taking notes? At least while I'm trying to go through the agenda. Are there any other action items? I do not see any. No. Uki.
I would like to discuss the image automation API a little bit, as I find it very hard to be used.
Put that on the agenda.
There is a link here for the issue. So let me describe the current problem. You want to automate the image container update of an application. You have that application deployed in its own namespace, let's say, and in that namespace you have the image pull secret for your application. The definition of that application sits inside your Fleet repository or your app repository. Let's take the first example, which is the easiest one. Let's say you use, like with Flux One, you use a monorepo, and in that monorepo you have all your app definitions. Now, when you bootstrap the cluster and you create the Fleet repo, at bootstrap time, you can tell the bootstrap command to use, instead of, let's say, SSH deploy key, you can use a token. And with that token, you can configure the token with write access, push access to the Fleet repo. So you don't need to set deploy keys with write access, you can use the token. You can also do the deploy key. We don't have support for that, and we should add an option to Bootstrap when it provisions the repo to create the deploy key with write access. So in one namespace, let's say in the Flux system namespace, that's where Flux Bootstrap provisions the Git repository object, which has write access. Now in your app namespace, you have the image pull secret, which allows Kubelet to pull the image. Having this setup is impossible to define an image automation workflow without duplicating either the Fleet repository object along with these secrets. That means you have to take the Git repo with the token secret and place that in your app repo. That means, for example, in a multi-tenancy setup, that means that the tenant that has read access to that namespace can do whatever to your whole infrastructure, because all of a sudden it has the secret that allows it to write back to Git. Another option is you have to duplicate the image pull secret from the app repo and place that image pull secret in a Flux system repo. Let's say that's a more acceptable workaround, but it still requires you to duplicate secrets. What we are doing, except for the image automation controllers, in every other controller, we allow sources to be referenced across namespaces. For example, in a Helm release, you can say, hey, use the Binami source from, let's say, Flux system namespace or whatever other namespace you have there. And of course, you can restrict that using a webhook and so on, like it's in the multi-tenancy example repo. You can say all my tenants are only allowed to reference sources from a particular namespace or no namespace at all. Now, with the current design, let's assume people don't use multi-tenancy. And I think that's most of our users. They are forced into duplicating secrets and also custom resources and all of that just to automate an app. My proposal is to make the image update automation custom resource fit all the other GitOps APIs, GitOps Toolkit APIs, rename the Git repository ref to source ref like we have everywhere else. Source ref could be type cross namespace reference. We use the same type from Helm controller and customized controller. That means this is a breaking change in the API because you have to have kind, name, and namespace will be optional. If no namespace is specified, then it will use the same namespace as the image automation object. And we can restrict the kind to only Git repositories, but in the future, we should also make the image automation controller write back to buckets. We have the code that pulls bucket YAMLs from buckets. We can write back to the bucket in the same way we do with Git. That's my proposal around this issue.
Why buckets? Like,
sorry,
I agree that we can, but why would we write back to buckets?
Can you say something now, Michael?
Yeah, sorry, is my microphone not working?
Now I can hear you. No, I have updated my macOS.
Okay, sorry. I was just saying, I agree that we can make controllers write to buckets. Why should we, though?
To offer the same feature we offer for other things.
It's not the same feature. Nothing else writes back to buckets, does it? They only read from buckets, right? And the use case for that is if you want to generate some stuff and dump it into a bucket. So in this case, this would be writing back to the generated stuff.
No, I'm thinking about using bucket instead of a Git repo. If people do that, then we should also write back there as we write to Git. It's a source in the end. It's up to the user to decide if how they are dealing with conflicts and all of that.
Yeah, well, maybe my imagination is lacking, but it seems like you would just end up overwriting whatever updates you made, since the bucket isn't usually used as a kind of read-write file system, right? It's just you dump stuff in there at the end of a process, and then you read from it again. Rather than like if you then write back to it, then the next time you dump stuff, you would just dump it over whatever you wrote.
It depends. What if you only write the base overlay, not the, I don't know, the env overlay? So in the environment overlay, let's say in staging, you have a customization custom resource. You place there the marker. Then from your CI, you only write to base, right? That's the whole point of customizations, right? to avoid such things. So you have a base directory, that's your app. That's where you write from CI all the updates. Let's say something changes in your config maps or in the deployment spec, you add more environment variables or whatever. But you don't want to write to the bucket every time you do a container build and push for dev. You just want to keep incrementing the image tag or incrementing. Having the image tag the latest as you do development.
Yeah, okay, I can see that how that would work. Yeah.
Also with Helm is the same stuff, right? You will update the Helm chart, but the Helm release which sits also in your bucket, that's where you replace the marker. You don't touch the Helm chart, and the Helm chart is built through your CI pipeline and pushed to the bucket, the whole chart, but will just override the image. It's the same stuff as in Git. I mean, what's the difference?
Well, one difference is that it's not in Git, so it's not really GitOps anymore, is it? I mean, yeah, I can see mechanically it might be quite convenient. It's true. Yeah, bucket ops. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's just an idea. It's not that we didn't have this request in the end. I was more about militating for having source ref across the whole APIs. This is the only place where instead of source, we actually say Git repository ref. And that limits what we could do in the future, where we're considering, hey, it's a source, we shouldn't care about it. While the image automation controller, maybe cares more about sources than everything else, in the end, it's just modifying the file and write it back. So I could see how we can add some abstraction to the write back thing and swap Git with bucket or, I don't know, something else in the future, who knows?
Yeah, you would have to, like, at present, you would kind of have to swap out the whole spec, because at present there's fields for, the commit message and so on. So it's very it's not just the source that's oriented around Git, it's pretty much everything, what branch to take it from and so on. So you'd have to kind of swap out everything and say, this is not a Git thing, this is a bucket or a generic source thing. So don't try and make commits, that's all meaningless. Just write back to files, or just poke the updates into, well, actually you can't do that using status, but you could overwrite particular deployments live if it came to it, right?
Yeah. Another thing around image automation controllers, we advertise how people should use PGP to safeguard their production systems. And we have a bunch of users that are currently followed that recommendation and they sign things. What's currently happening now is that a customized controller, source controller will reject changes made by the image automation controller because it's not signed.
Should add signing commits.
Yeah,
certainly.
I think it's from a security point of view, it would be a great improvement to our pipeline, because we tell people, hey, you should sign commits, then we don't do that. So
then the automation doesn't. Yeah.
There is a workaround. Could be a workaround for this if, let's say, we will be able in the future to create a branch if it's not there. Let's say you specify, so you check out the branch from the Git repository object, let's say main. Then you tell the image automation controller, hey, you check out main, but you should check in updates, the updates branch, and maybe that branch is not there. And we create it. Then when you open the pull request, you as a developer, you could sign that commit. You could pull the commit, sign it with your own key, do a force push.
Sure. Yeah.
Then you could merge it with the right key, but that's so super
Yeah,
complicated.
absolutely. It'd be better if it just supported signing commits with the key you give it.
Also, creating a branch if it's not there, I think it's a great feature, because then you could do with GitHub Actions, or I don't know, any other CI tool. You could open pull requests. Maybe for production system, you don't trust releases, and a patch release could break anything, so you don't want that fully automated. But you want to see a pull request with, hey, here is the latest patch that you should deploy on production. Are you sure you want to do that? And are you sure you want to do that means, okay, I'm going to merge that.
Yeah. It does open the door to some workflows that are pretty useful. Yeah. It's tricky because it's kind of racy. Like, if the branch does exist, what do you do? Do you open the same branch every time you do a run?
Yeah.
Do you pile commits into it, or do you create a fresh branch? And if you create a fresh branch, then you might just end up with a whole bunch of branches which actually have an implicit ordering to them, because it did this and then it did this and then it did this, depending on the state.
So how the GitHub action does it, that we use all over the place in Flux tool. You specify the branch. If the branch doesn't exist, it creates it. If it exists, it will do a rebase and will override the commit. So it never does more than one
force push. Yeah.
Force push.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's one way around it.
We have that all over the place for months now. It works great in 99% of the situations. And I think that's good enough. I mean, it made our life so much easier. And the fact that, it just force pushes and it's only one commit that you review, and that commit bundles all the image updates. In our case, are not image updates, are manifest updates, because we open a pull request for the whole thing, deployments and everything, also documentation based on Semver. But it's the same stuff in the end. Yeah, I find it easy to review and understand what's going on. There are many examples in Flux2 repos, in the Flux2 repo, pull requests made by the Flux CD bot with this kind of workflow.
Yeah. So regarding cross-references, yeah, I think there's a workable model based on Lee's proposal where, so I don't think cross-references are workable while you don't have fine control over who gets access to what, right? So if you sort of effectively give people access to any Git repository that's represented in Flux system, that's bad. But at least in Lee's model, and maybe other ones, you can't access it unless you're given explicit permissions for it. So I'm much happier with cross-references in that scenario, and I wouldn't be against. I think, replicating the image secret, as you described, is not terrible, because quite a lot of the time you might actually want to have a separate image secret anyway. For instance, if you're using different repos, different image registries, then you might want an image secret that can access all of them at once if you're doing all your automation in one place. Plus, if you're on a platform, quite often for your deployments and so on, those things are just automatic anyway, so you wouldn't be using image pull secrets, and you would have to do something separate for automation anyway. So it's not terrible. You won't always have to duplicate credentials. On the other hand, aligning, given a kind of workable model, aligning with how the other controllers work, not against that at all.
Okay, so I'll open a pull request. Do you want to also rename Git repository ref to source ref, or leave it like it is?
I think for the reason that changing to use other things would also mean changing other bits of the spec. I think it's probably better to be specific, keep it specific for now.
Yeah, how we do it, for example, in customize or helm control, we especially in customize, we make the kind required. So you can't just say source ref blah blah. You have to say source ref kind, git repository, name, this one, namespace, that one.
Mm-hmm.
So if you afterwards, if you look at the custom resource, you actually see what type of source is using, because we require it, the kind to be there. So you still see, okay, git repository, this is what I'm using here as a source. So yeah, it's more verbose than what we currently have, where we say git repository ref, we change to source ref, kind, git repository name, and so on. So it adds one field to the YAML.
Yeah, I'm not so worried about that as about making it less obvious that there's only one kind of value that can go there.
Mm.
While that's the case, right? If we figure out a scheme for having different kinds of thing, then we can change our minds. But as things stand, there's only one kind of value that can go there. So it's better to be specific and not suggest otherwise.
Okay, so in here, I've pasted the link. So this will no longer work for creating a policy for image automation, right? We'll have to create a new policy that only matches the kind image automation, and set here a different path that will be request object spec git .checkout git repository ref .namespace, and denied in a multi-tenancy situation.
Yeah, I guess so. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, once we do the change and we release the new image automation controller, we should also update the rules here to block it. Yep.
With one hand, give cross namespace references, and then with the other hand, take it away.
Yeah, we give it for those that don't care about multi-tenancy and they trust all their, I don't know, cluster users or whatever they are, their teams. And for those that are actually into multi-tenancy and restrict stuff, then we say to them, hey, you either have to copy the image pull secret or you have to copy the Git repository and its secret. That's the trade-off when you actually want full.
Yeah, I think you would be running
isolation.
automation in a different namespace, right? You'd probably want to run it in system namespace, or perhaps a namespace for each tenant. So it's more likely you'd be copying the image pull secret, I think.
Yeah. Or I don't know.
But they can all live in one namespace, really, because the Git repository secret is going to be for their own app config anyway.
Yeah.
So it'll go wherever that goes.
Yeah. I think for a multi-tenancy, from a multi-tenancy perspective, there's not actually an issue because the Git repository is in the tenant namespace. So adding all the image automation there should just work. The image pull secret is there because the tenant owns it. The Git repository is there. It's tenant repository. So that should work fine. We just have to prevent any kind of tenant from referencing other tenants' sources. And this is the current model we have until we have this kind of restriction built in Flux.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Should we move on? Should we go to Terraform providers? Stefan, is that? I'll try and make some notes in the background.
Yeah, so this is just hopefully a quick one. So currently the Terraform provider has like a dependency on other Git providers that the provider is you're able to write files to the repo that we've created. Right now, GitHub and soon, if Azure DevOps merges, my PR has this functionality. I know there's a PR for GitLab to do this, but it's been active for a while and it's bundled together a bunch of things, so they haven't been able to merge it yet. So currently, and there is no, or I've seen a couple, but I don't think they're maintained, and I don't know really the status of them. There are a couple of Git providers, Terraform providers, that allow you to. The only requirements we have is that you can create a branch and write a file. So basically, mimic the behavior of how the GitHub provider allows you to do like file in repo. And so I talked to Phil at HashiCorp about this because I've started writing a talk for this, and it kind of worked. And I asked him like, would HashiCorp like to take this? Because that would be like the best option. Just like, yeah, HashiCorp can take it, and then we can have an official Git provider. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't really fit them right now. So the question is more of, is it okay if we put this in within the Flux org, or is there a better place to put this? Because I see a need for a generic Git Terraform provider, but I don't really know where that project should live.
So this generic Git provider will be using what, SSH agent or?
libgit 2. So it uses git to go as to do the git commands.
libgit 2?
Yeah, so it uses the git to go project. So because it's written in Go, and the only thing it does is it does the way that the current implementation in GitHub works is it does API calls to the GitHub API to go write this file. The difference here is that we have to like clone the repo, change the file if the content changes, and then just do another commit.
Yeah, I understand, but we cannot use libgit2 anywhere because except for containers that runs on an Alpine image. Once you add libgit2 to anything that people run on their computers, they'll not be able to run it.
Well, you can bake libgit2 into the actual Go binary, can't you?
No, it uses C bindings.
Yeah.
It has to be distributed with a shared library.
It needs the kernel patches. It needs all
yeah,
those.
In that case, we can use GoGit if that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And
I see no options to GoGit in terms of distributing through CLIs, because then we'll have no support for Windows. libgit2 is not able to work on Windows. It does calls to things that are Linux. And second of all, it will not work on any Linux distribution unless you compile your whole thing, right? It will not work on Ubuntu, it will not work on Mac, and so on. There is no libgit support on any kind of systems except Alpine that has the package. No one else has the package up to date, so we cannot include those in CLIs.
Yeah, but okay, if in that case we can put it in like run GoGit instead, because Azure DevOps doesn't need this anyways. I'm just thinking about people who, for example, want to use a Terraform provider but are doing like self-hosted Git. We know that probably somebody will want to run some. If we can add support for what's it called, support for self-signed TLS verification, we can probably see somebody say, I want to use the Terraform provider, but I also want to host my own Git server that is just generic Git, no APIs. But I can't bootstrap. And that's like the big thing missing there is that there is no real Git provider for Terraform right now. And the problem with this is that I think that there's going to be interest outside of Flux for the provider. So that's kind of why I talked to HashiCorp first about this, because I thought it would actually be a good thing if they took it and I could help with it there. But it's like the other option is that either lives under my own personal account or my employer. But it's like, then it's weird, having examples in the Terraform Flux provider saying, oh, use this provider here to do your bootstrapping.
So I'm for adding this to the current Flux provider and use the package/git module that writes back to Git using GoGit, and it is the same code as Flux CLI Bootstrap.
Okay.
Right, you have all the code there. It knows how to detect, oh, the sync file changed. I have to push that. I have to write this commit message and so on.
Yeah.
Like we are now reusing manifest gen. That's in Flux 2, but Flux 2 also uses the package./git that does all the read and write. So we can use that as well in our provider and add an optional step. Hey, if you don't want to use GitHub built-in support for that, or you are using GitLab and there is no support for pushing, then you can use this new thing in here and that will do the push for you, and it will reuse all the code we have in the Bootstrap. And I think it's great because if we fix something in the CLI, then we'll just update the Terraform provider, and all the GitLab fixes that we did in the last weeks will work there as well.
Okay, actually, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, it's a lot less work than building a new provider.
Can it be its own provider and just in the same repo with the Flux one? Is that something
it would just be another resource, really? It would be like a resource, like git file, and then it's like use this resource if you can't use the GitHub providers or whatever.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of namespace to the Flux provider, but you can use it on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah, we have two namespaces now: Flux install, which gives you all the install manifests, and another one called Flux sync, which gives you the Git repository and the customization manifest for the syncing of the whole Bootstrap. And they are optional. You can just use Flux install and get only the install things without doing the sync, and maybe you want to do the sync on your own or using other stuff. So yeah, it's namespace, and it
would just be alongside those.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
And Hide wants to implement a generic SSH support for Bootstrap. And my thinking is we'll do that probably in a package, in Flux package. And once we have that support in the Bootstrap, if the Terraform provider uses the same package, then you could run Terraform apply. If you have the SSH agent on your computer, it will take the key from there and will do the push in that way, right? Without having to rewrite all this stuff for Terraform specifically. So I think the more options we'll add to the Bootstrap, they should be like automatically imported in the Terraform stuff with just updating a package or adding a new resource, without writing code as it is. Just reuse what we already are doing in Flux Bootstrap. Make sense?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that makes actually a lot of sense. It's just because it's we need to be able to cover the whole. People want to use Terraform, but their own Git stuff. So that's going to actually solve a lot of problems. Great.
Cool. All right. So the conclusion there is to put it alongside the Flux providers that exist already in that same repo. Is that right? Just to make sure. Sorry, I was doing notes elsewhere while you were deciding that. Can someone give me a thumbs up for confirm? Okay, tough. I'll just put that in the notes.
Hide, do you want to talk about OCI support?
No, my audio setup right now, my headphones were dead, so I had to charge them. So let's do that next time. The short summary is that we still can't implement OCI support for Helm charts at this moment because we can't inject a custom registry client, which we need to feed credentials and stuff. But they are slowly making parts of the API we need publicly available. So my hopes are high that they at least make the registry client available in the next minor version. But who knows?
Cool. Yeah, so for those that are not aware of what's happening, Helm, the CLI, now can connect to OCI repositories and pull there, instead of containers, pull Helm charts. And we can't use those packages currently because most of them are marked internally. And now Helm is slowly making parts of that orchestration available for consumption. And once we have all the things in place, we want to consider adding this feature to source controller. So source controller will be able to say, you'll be able to configure source controller and define a Helm repository that looks at an OCI repo instead of a Helm repo over HTTPS. That's the gist of it.
Okay, so another thing, a thing that I put on the table of agenda is image controller beta planning, and I really just mean, kind of next milestone after, basically at the point of it being part of GitOps toolkit and having all the bits and pieces like reference documents and so on. So the next thing is, what things are most useful so that we can start the clock on the Flux V1 deprecation. That's pretty much the next milestone. So I made a project under Flux CD called something like Image Controller Beta, I think. Actually, let me find it and give a link. That's a good thing to do. And I started populating that, but I suspect there's probably things that aren't even issues yet that might need to go in there.
I would add here all the issues, features that Sontochi implemented in Notification Controller. We can now trigger image automation updates from Docker Hub, Quay, Google Container Registry, I think today Nexus, if Sontochi figures out something there. We have hardboard support, GitHub Container Registry support. I mean, even more than what the old Flux receiver was doing. So I'm very happy with where we are there. One thing we don't cover, right, is looking at timestamps inside.
Yep.
Yes, that's the.
I even have that as already on the project. Yeah.
I so dislike this approach, but
yeah, I know.
We have to pull a layer. That means rate limiting. That means so much stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe possible to get the metadata reasonably cheaply, but it is still a fetch per image rather than just one fetch for all the tags. Same is true of getting digests, annoyingly, because the API gives you a list of tags but doesn't tell you what digests you have to request each one individually to get the digest. Albeit you can do that fairly cheaply with a head request. But yeah, it's not super well designed for the Docker registry API.
Yeah, I think more important than this one is the possibility to connect to a self-hosted container registry. We have an issue in Flux2 repo, I think, that is about that. The problem is with certificates. So you spin up your own registry, then you issue a self-signed cert. You tell Kubelet, hey, trust my self-signed cert, but the image automation controller will, the image reflector controller will not trust it. So I looked a little bit at the Google package that we are using, and I think it's possible to tell it, hey, use this certificate, trust this one. So it's all about hooking it up. It relates a lot with what we can do now with libgit 2 as well, and allow for self-hosted Git repos.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can supply an HTTP client to the scanner. So
but
as long as you can do that, you can set it up with its own CA.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's more common for people to run their own registry than running their own Git servers. So
Yep.
if I would have to prioritize this, I would say more important for the image automation stuff, custom sets. Let me find the issue.
Samtochi, are the webhooks mostly done and just need to be sort of recognized in the project to make sure they're tracked?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
Stefan mentioned image registry webhooks.
Yeah.
Are those for the notification controller? Are those actually mostly done? And just did Stefan bring them up because they should be represented in the next milestone, even though they're already done?
They're mostly done.
Okay.
The only one that is left is Azure. The rest are done. I'm about to make a pull request for Nexus. It's working with you now. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Cool. But it'd be good to get them on the board so that we can have a better balance of things to do and things that are already done.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. I'll find them and put them on the board.
Yeah, so as of yesterday, with the yesterday release, we also have docs for this, but the docs are in the API spec. I need to write a nice introduction for them and reference them from the guide in here. Say, hey, if you don't want to wait for the image reflector to pull every, I don't know, half hour or whatever the interval is, you have all these options and link to them. Harbor, Docker Hub, Quay, GCR, GitHub, that will trigger, will tell the image, will trigger an image scan on demand. Will not wait anymore for it. So once we reference all these, the API spec from the main doc, I think we can close the webhook section if we want to create a, I don't know, overreaching issue like for the image automation stuff. On demand scanning, or if you want to call it something like that.
Yep, okay. So I've got the webhooks should be on the board and self-signed certificates. The build time sorting, which is already on there, but let's mention it. Are there any more suggestions for things that should be in?
I've pasted the issue. Maybe we should move it. I don't know.
Oh, so, okay, great.
We could move it to the image reflector repo and then reference.
Okay, yeah, I will do that.
We can transfer the issue and so on.
Sorry, Michael, what board are you referring to? I'm not too sure. Here.
Sorry about that. I will paste a link. Here we go. Flux CD Project 1. do I move it? I may not be able to move that. I have to ask someone. The self-signed cert bug, that is. Yeah, I think actually modular, a bit of document writing, it's pretty close to releasable.
What I think we still miss are examples in each API spec doc, like we have in all the others. For example, I know Relu in his pull request, he listed a bunch of examples, and we don't have them in the doc, and they will get lost because I don't expect people to search pull requests and so on. Like how you can use the prefix to sort, to extract things, and all those examples. For the Minio example is super nice for people to figure out how to use the regex and with the alphabetical sorting to automate a bunch of things, right?
Yeah.
I could work on that if you want.
Okay, yeah, I will probably get around to it at some point if you don't manage it, but yeah.
So I'll try today to add the namespace to the Git repository ref and improve the API docs with examples. I think it's super important to focus on the image controllers, right? To start the counter.
Yeah, we really want to start that clock, don't we? Yeah. Okay, cool. So can you open an issue, or when you open a PR for the cross namespace Git repository, Stefan, put it on the board. If that's okay.
Yeah, we have the issue. I'll just.
Oh, there's an issue already. Okay.
Yes. It's the first one I've pasted here.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool.
85.
Could probably just do that now, actually. No. If okay. Done. Okay, cool. What do we got? 10 2.
One more thing I want to bring up. Someone made a proposal for adding a new command to the Flux CLI called Flux logs. And here is the issue. I made a comment there. I don't see this as a priority in any way. People could use kubectl logs, pipe into JK, write a JK filter, JQ filter to parse the JSON log, extract only errors and so on. But I write that sometimes, but it's really annoying. It looks like a nice user experience improvement to just say, hey, Flux logs, give me all the errors for, I don't know, pod info in that namespace. I need to list everything. Could also tail the logs and could watch through and you just see what's going on. Feels like a good thing, but should we write more details to the issue? There are lots of examples on GitHub how you can extract logs and stream logs from Kubernetes into your own CLI. I've done it in a bunch of projects, and maybe mark this label as a good first issue or needs help or something like that. I think with enough guidance, anyone with basic Go skills could put the thing together.
Right, with a few pointers into
Yeah.
how to
With
connect to
some
Kubernetes,
SSH,
stuff like that.
here is how you can connect to a pod, stream the logs, and here is how you can parse the logs with JSON. Fine. 2 or 3 links to some examples. Should do it. And
yeah, I think that would be a good investment of time. Bring those pointers in and marking it as.
okay, I can also do that and link better here. Yeah, so if any one of you has ideas on how we should display this, maybe as a table with columns, or how we want to, after we get the JSON object, let's say we strip everything, we only keep the, we filter them based on kind name namespace, how we want to, show them. If it's line by line table with columns like kind name namespace error message, or I don't know.
You can't watch things with tables usually, so because you have to have the widths before you output the table.
Right,
so it's usually better to, just put a tag character or something in between.
Yeah, good point. I didn't thought about that. So how are we going to represent the fact that, that particular error is for a kind name and a namespace? We could do a prefix, right?
The stuff that is basically a fixed width, you can like put all the things that are fixed width at the start, and then if you're lucky, then the rest of it will kind of mostly line up.
Cool. Yeah, I'm guessing it's up to the person that takes this to experiment maybe with different types of outputs.
Yeah.
I just want to mention a quick thing, and I talked to Stefan already about this, but yesterday I found an issue with the testing in customized controller. Just a quick warning: if you run them locally, customized controller, when you're running the test, it would actually use your kube config, that you have configured in your shell, and not the in-memory test cluster when applying things while you're running the test. Just a warning so that you don't have like a production cluster set up with kube config and you run the test, because then it will just apply that to the production cluster. I'm fixing it right now in because I'm adding more tests for the event. I have to fix it anyways. It's just a warning if you end up having to debug customized controller that this is an issue right now. It was very
specifically for customized controller.
Yeah,
because it shells out to kubectl, and then because if you don't give a kube config, it will just use the shell's kube config, which in turn turns out to be whatever you have on your computer at the moment.
So it will create a test namespace with a service account called test. Yeah. That's happening, right? Because it does a kubectl apply of those YAMLs. And
Okay.
So it's, but I'll fix that in the PR because I'm adding tests to verify health check events and other events. So I'll fix both. I'll test both the health check events and that other older issue I found last year with the race condition and commit status. So I'm going to try to fix all of those by just writing a couple of tests that verify that the events are actually what you expect them to be. And then
nice. Thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah.
Awesome. We could also discuss afterwards, maybe just the two of us on Slack. I figured out how we could deal with health checks and not spam anymore. We just have to add a new condition. We can talk afterwards. It's
sure.
It's similar with what we do in Helm controller. We have dedicated conditions for parts of the code logic, and we could do the same here. Like health checking it's its own thing. We could have its own condition, then it can track its status and avoid the spam.
Sure.
All right. I think now's a good time to draw a line under the meeting. And so thanks very much, everyone, for
Thank
giving
you.
us some of your morning.
Bye.
And see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.